Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and I'm delighted to be back with you today on SkyWire. It's exciting. We love doing it, and we learn so much each and every week. I take away an enormous amount of information from my panel as well as just the comments and things that you provide. So we're really happy to be here today. And today we have Margarita. Today.
Hi,
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Beautiful weather here in Kingston and not too cold, not too hot. It's actually perfect.
Oh, I love perfect weather. And then Gail will be here. She's on a radio show at the moment. I'm guessing about her book, but she'll be back, so she's got a little placeholder there. And we do miss some of our other panelists, but everybody's doing something. So I think that's wonderful. And when you listen to your life, you've got to be ready to be spontaneous, got to be ready sometimes to say no or say yes. And you're listening. When you apply listening to your life, life makes sense. And we have to be ready to come out of our box and not always do the same things that we've always done. And I think it's really important. So I commend our panelists for all the wonderful things that they are doing. Elaine is watching the Pope. That's fabulous. And Mark and Heidi are doing another broadcast, which is great. So Dave's probably traveling wherever. Katrina's doing something creative that she has to do, a project. So that's wonderful. And Margarita and I here, we're going to start off the show, and happy to bring a new topic, another new topic. So for those of you that are listening to us for the first time, this show is always about listening and how we apply listening to different aspects of our lives, different levels of our lives. What is listening? How does our listening take us to another level with whatever it is that we're doing? And if you are tuning in to the replay, by all means, connect with us anytime that you get to watch this. We'd love to hear from you. So today's show is about listening from the eyes of a listener. And it just came to me while I was listening for what the show should be about today. And sometimes we come here with no topic, no title, no agenda, sometimes with something specific. This is kind of specific and yet not so specific, which listening is, right? So what do we mean by coming to listening from the eyes of a listener? So somebody might say, oh my God, that could be, or I was saying, that could sound a little critical at times because I'm coming to see how I'm listening or how I'm not. Well, that's not critical because if I can come to my world as a listener, I'm coming open to whatever and however I show up. And I have some really good examples of that this week and how I learned. But Margarita, what do you think when I say, listening from the eyes of a listener? What would you think of that?
Yeah, I heard you say come out of the box, right? And so if I'm the box, I would have a box that's transparent. And this box I can see in on all sides. And so that's, I think, illustrates something about what you say about listening, because if we can have a transparent box, it's not open yet. It can open. Nothing can go in and out, but we can see what's inside. Isn't that cool?
Yes, that's really cool. And what is that, paper clips?
Yes, and then of course, and now I'm going to take the action and open it up. And then I'll share my gifts. And here are some of my things that I have inside. You can see it, or I'll share it.
That's a wonderful picture, a metaphor for us, this us container of being a box. And when we can turn on our listening and we can look at ourselves, listening through what we see, we can see those paper clips inside. And we can see the different color clips, and we can see where we have attachments and where we don't. And what we learn from the eyes of from love, basically. right?
Yeah, that's really cool because if you have a box that's sort of dim, dark or black, or you have no awareness that you are a box and there's another little box inside of your heart and you don't know it, but you have some fears about it, then I suggest, I propose to listen to that little box and bring it out, even though it's black or brown or red or whatever, and value that box and listen to that box and see, oh my goodness, I were not aware of you. And then open that little box, and maybe in that little box, there is a little child who wants to be listened. It's something that you haven't known, but you remember it as your childhood. That's something that everyone have an inner little kid inside that needs to be listened to. Because if you
Exactly.
don't, you're going to be a little bit temper tantrums, anger, all kinds of emotions and things, and you didn't know where it came from. So look at that little box, whatever it is inside. That's what I would say about that.
That's great. So let me just say, so I examine, dissect listening on a regular level, okay? And this week I had an experience where I realized that I was so excited about talking about listening that I wasn't listening.
I can relate to that.
Like how, so what would you, so how can you relate to that?
Yeah, because I mean, I get so engaged in what I'm saying that I stop listening to what the viewers or the listeners are experiencing, and that becomes boring for them, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
really boring when somebody is self-obsessed and trying to uh, toot their horn, right?
So I found myself doing that. And you know what's interesting? I think I've heard myself do that before.
Uh-huh.
But I somehow gave myself some excuse, or I brushed it off and said, "Oh, something." But I think that be lovingly critical, or lovingly aware, or lovingly perceptive about our behavior and how we show up is so important. So I'm going to share things today that I am being critical. I'm not being critical to hurt myself. I'm being critical that I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And I can do that from a loving, listening eye and heart so that I can change. So one day this week, I was at the health club and I was walking out, and I saw my husband talking to this gentleman, and I went over, and this gentleman was talking about a program that he had taken about listening. And so my ears just perked up because, oh my God, I love it. I love it. And then he was telling me about this TED Talk that was really fabulous and taught him so much about listening. And I have always wanted to do a TED Talk about listening. Margarita, do you know what TED Talks are?
Yes, yes, I love TED Talks,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for all of you out there that don't know, it's these 18-minute talks that brilliant people do about something. And they're done all over the world, and they're 18 minutes, and their tagline for TED is ideas worth sharing, or ideas worth spreading. So he told me about this guy that did a talk about listening, and I'm like, Marilyn, you want to do that? Oh my God, that guy's. And I got so caught up in wanting this man to know all that I know about listening. I never even saw the TED talk. Oh my ego got there. My ego was staring me right in the face because I wanted so much to tell him what I know about listening. Because what I know about listening in that moment seemed so much better than what he could tell me about listening. And so I
And
wasn't,
you didn't even see it. You
no,
didn't even hear it.
I didn't hear it. I didn't see it. I just know that what I knew about listening was so much better than what anybody else knew about listening. And so I had to tell this man all that I knew, and I caught myself. When I walked out, I caught myself after having the conversation with him, and I said, you know what, Marilyn? Next time you just have to listen.
Good for you.
right?
This is good stuff, you
Well,
know.
it is, it really is, because what I know about listening is subatomic.
Now you have to explain that.
Okay. So what I know about thank you for asking me to explain subatomic. And I can make up words. So some words I'm not sure if they're real or they're my made up words. So subatomic is like I understand listening from an ethereal perspective really well. Like the underneath, the underlying thing about listening, the the stuff you that's not so tangible. I really understand that. I also understand the practical, like how you stand still in presenting yourself, how you make eye contact, those tools of listening. But what I want to help people understand is why. Not just that we'll understand each other better, but we'll understand the universe better, right? And how I dissect it ethereally, if that's so that's a subatomic. When I listen to people talk, it's mostly um, the beginning layers of it, which is fine. I'm not judging because there's so much to learn in all of it. That's where we consider the balance. But I heard myself going more into the subatomic as opposed to the initial levels of it. So I hope I'm making sense. And I want everybody to understand it all. So I caught myself making a judgment and wanting to clean it up as opposed to backing off. And I did that a couple of times where I've seen myself, I listen, but I get it so quickly that I want to give an answer or I want to give more. And I'm learning to back off and wait more of my turn. I hope that makes sense. And when I went back to listen to this TED Talk, it was really good. And this gentleman did touch upon like so many key factors about listening in 18 minutes. And it was really good. And so I learned from the entire experience. And I really watched myself. And I watched myself being constructive with myself in a way that I didn't go and, like blame myself for why didn't I do that? But I took listening to another level of, oh, this is really good. I got it now. And if I wasn't listening, if I was blocked by being if I was blocking my criticism or my critiquing, I wouldn't have gotten to the level that I got to. So I guess what I'm saying is let's not get blocked by anything. Let's allow ourselves to listen to our anythings so that we can change everything. Margarita?
Yes, so I want to say something here. Imagine whether it's subatomic with the nucleus and the electrons and the subatomics. There is another level underneath of that, right, with particles. And then you think about the greater view of our solar system. So if listening is what this show is about, we have to stay inside of each one of us here and just feel it, feel the energy around. And that's the attractive motion that holds the whole universe intact. Can you see that? And if something stands up or critiques or whatever, that should really, like a storm of meteors that smooths the surface out. This is what's going on when the critic pops up. That critic needs to be having a sandstorm and washing over the face so that the face in the end is smooth like a baby's bottom. And so I would direct that to myself too if I'm overstepping this thing too. Because if we are deviating from who we are underneath, then that sandstorm or meteor shower or volcano, whatever, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And that's how the David was created, right? Chiseled away at all the stone, right? To
Yes.
get the David. And so
Yeah.
we are creating Davids. We are
Yeah.
each another a David. And you know,
You mean Michelangelo's David, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought you were meaning Dave.
No, oh no! Well, that would be funny though, wouldn't it? Uh, no, and if Dave is listening, no, I meant Dave, the other David. I just want to comment, if whoever's listening, we'd love to have you chat with us. So please feel free to send a comment. Let us, I'm watching the stream, so if you have anything to add, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know who you are so we can say hi and, welcome you here as well by name if possible. So yeah, I don't know why this has been a week for me of that, of chiseling away at Marilyn to become more of a David, or be able to see more of my David maybe. That's another thing, to see more of my David. So
Can I pop in here
yeah,
and say,
I want you
I
to.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't want you to be a David, you know. I want you to be a mother, like a Venus or a Mother Mary, if we go in Michelangelo style here. But that's not good enough either.
Okay.
You can't assume that you are a David or a Madonna or a whatever. You have to be you. You
Well,
have to
that's
be
yeah.
you.
Well, yeah, no question. But the you, and I agree with you. And being the you is being your gift,
Yeah.
being your, this masterpiece that we are, and chiseling away at the outer layers of things, or the things that we hear ourselves do that we can't figure out. So yes, being the you, and no matter what that looks like, being that precious you. So I want to ask you, so what experience have you had this week that, as eyes of a listener, you can tell us about, that you learned something about yourself?
Well, I had a conversation the other day. I was at the barbecue, and this person was sort of a little bit ranting, and so I started to say, combating a little bit, and then I realized, and then other person has just stepped up further, right? And in the end, it could have been an argument, but it didn't go that way because I realized that that person is stuck in that place right now. This person cannot change it right now. So then I have to back down. And I
Uh-huh.
did. I mean, it felt like, I can't, he's wrong, like this is not like that. And I said, okay. It was very, very uncomfortable inside to actually back down and see from a higher point of view, because my angel was say, stop it, stop it, stop it, And in the end, I listened. That took 10 seconds maybe, right? And then, so then I left. And then the other person wasn't so happy about that. And, are you leaving already, Because I think that when we are in an interaction where our ego pops up, the other person's ego also pops up, and the other person's ego take that energy from the other person when they are right, and the other person agrees that they're right. So this is like a very faulty, very vicious circle of stealing energy from each other. So by me just saying, don't do anything, and I left, I stopped that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other person didn't like it. And so then it stopped that integration, right? What do you say about that? That when somebody talk, they stealing your attention, they stealing your energy to promote themselves.
Well, as the eye of a listener,
Mhm.
so the listener hears that. The listener
Mhm.
says, okay, there's something this person may need more than me. They need to be heard maybe more than me this time. They have a point to make. They're excited about something. I don't need anything right this minute. At this moment, I can be a receiver for this other person.
Well, you're completely right about that, of course, but in this case, in that interaction I had, they came back like several times, and I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more, and
Okay,
then
okay,
it's
okay,
like,
okay. So then at a certain point, you
yeah,
listen and you say, okay, now I have to take myself out of this,
right.
right? And that's okay. And people don't do that too often, or they do, or they have a hard time doing it, or they do it in a rude manner. It's
Hmm.
like, I gotta go now, as opposed to doing it in a way that is soothing to you and to somebody else, so where you feel complete, right? Instead of feeling like, oh my God, I'm choking, I gotta go. Don't wait so.
I notice sometimes that we try to be so diplomatic, right? Especially as
Yes,
healers and coaches, we try to be diplomatic. We want to be come across friendly and kind and all of that stuff. But sometimes you really have to pipe up and says, "No, that's not so."
that's right. Sometimes you have to say, okay, it's like Marion Williamson would say. If anybody's ever heard of her, she will say, sometimes you have to love somebody from a distance. Sometimes you can't be in a relationship with someone. You got to love them from a distance because it's suicide. It's a drain. It's sick. And you got to take yourself out of bad situations and love them because they're a human being. Love them because they're on some journey and you know that someday, somewhere, somehow, some lifetime, they'll learn something. But you got to take yourself out because if you don't, you won't be there available for somebody else. And Dave's been sending, I don't know why it's not coming up on our comment stream, but Dave is in traffic and he has been writing comments to us like, am I being cloned? So for those of you who are listening, we were talking about the David, Michelangelo's David, and our own very David Moore has been saying something like, is that me? Yeah. But he has added some really good points, and he wanted to say that a form of organized chaos, um, Marguerite, is an order out of chaos. So anyway, I'm going to
Thank
check
you,
back.
Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for being there. So I'm going to check back and make sure that we're not missing all of the different comments. So okay, here's a comment from Dave. People do not get stuck in what happened to them. They get stuck in the significance of the event. That's an interesting comment. Margarita, what do you think?
Yeah,
People
well,
do.
you know, we have values, right? We have
Mhm.
attached values to different things, and we have different emotional responses to each one of those values. And so, probably that's what he means that the significance for us, maybe this thing is a holy grail for us, and then somebody else says something nasty about it. We're going to be upset, you
That's
know?
right. It's the
I can give you
emotion. Yes.
I can give you an example of that.
Go ahead. Give us an example.
Yeah, and you know, I'm tending to Buddhism, right? So I was talking with a person, and then I said a quote from the Dalai Lama, whatever it was, and he said, "Oh, I don't believe in that," and I felt like the energy rising up on the back of my neck, and oh, I had to really control myself. When we believe in
Okay.
something that a person is really a good person and somebody else doesn't agree, we don't take that lightly. We don't take
Right.
that
So
lightly. And
what
I
did
think that's exactly what Dave mean there with significance.
so what did you do? You heard yourself. You heard this person. You heard yourself. And then what
Yeah.
did you hear as the action?
Well, then this person took it a step further and sort of 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 reflecting what I put out to that person, and and then I'm dipping down, I'm getting lower and lower and lower, and then that could be also an agreement, disagreement, or even a fist fight in the end. But I didn't let it go to that, right? But I'm just saying that as an example. And then so I had to shut down. I just like,
Right. So that's how listening travels. Listening travels. It's a boomerang.
Yeah.
It's you're in the space. You're feeling all right, or maybe you're not feeling so great, but you're feeling all right. You know it. Then you hear somebody throws you for a loop, and then you get
Yes.
right.
And then it was like I was having being a fish, and that other person was throwing out the bait, and I bit on it.
Exactly.
I've been had.
Exactly. Exactly. And you hear yourself, and you've heard yourself. You've listened to being
Oh,
had, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
maybe how you have been had. What has had been done for? I mean, how you use had, and
feel
then
horrible.
so you listen to how you feel, and then you listen to how you come back. That is the process. So, case in point, um, my children. I have two daughters, and I am divorced from their father, and I'm remarried. He's remarried, and the woman that he's remarried to is someone that I had a relationship with years ago. She worked with me, and so we are my children. I am Jewish. My ex-husband's Jewish. My current husband is not, and his wife is not. So we had a Jewish holiday, and one of the things that we did yesterday was break the fast. Right? We fasted, and my daughters and I and their husbands and whatever, we all fasted and come together to have break the fast. And when we have family things, we usually go to one of my daughter's houses because it's neutral and we all get along pretty much for the most part. So everybody is there. Their father and his wife and their children and me and my husband and his children, we all get together. And the neutral place is my daughter's house, one of my daughter's houses. Well, I would love them to come here, but we haven't gotten to that point. So sometimes when I walk in to my daughter's house, I can hear myself with things that come up that I'm being had
You
because
bit
of
the bait.
because of the way I sometimes feel about my ex-husband's wife. But I have to say that I went in and I'm beginning to see her, hear her, listen to her, observe her, which is all listening, differently than I used to. I'm hearing a nicer person. I'm hearing a more lovely, kind, caring person than I used to hear. Whether or not she's changing or I'm changing is a different story. So last night I decided to go into my daughter's home with a different feeling. And I watch my being hadness and how I reacted and how I would react, right? And so I did that, and I was nicer, and I had a better time. I was more comfortable. I wasn't, feeling uncomfortable. So this listening thing is an ongoing practice.
Did you get feedback from that from her?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I think my noticing her niceness is feedback. So it's kind of like I wanted to see nice, so I saw nice, and then by being nice, I got more nice. We I have grandchildren, um, and we kind of were sharing them last night
Wow.
in a very nice way, and through my listening, I saw it. Through my listening, I got to contribute to it. And she did something really beautiful. She brought some young woman with her to my daughter's house who was more orthodox and didn't want to eat as early as the rest of us ate. She wanted to wait. And Tracy um, waited to eat with this young woman, and I thought that was lovely. And so I got to see a bigger relationship here. So yeah, I mean, I got over a big thing, and it was
Mhm.
all through listening.
Mhm.
It's all through listening and this notion of seeing life through the eyes of a listener.
I have a question for you,
Sure,
if I may.
absolutely. I'm an open book.
What is beyond listening? Like, what is the next step in this process of going deeper and deeper and deeper into listening? What is the next step? What is the next show? Like the next series? What is beyond listening?
There's nothing beyond listening. It's just more information, I think. But I don't know because I'm not there yet. For
Good
instance,
answer.
so good question. So for instance, one of the things that this week was I was going to synagogue for Yom Kippur, and I was really interested in going because I wanted to get something. I had an agenda. I wanted to get something, some jewel of information, whether it was from the rabbi's sermon, from something that I read, from somebody sitting there. I knew that I would get something. And then I realized how often I go somewhere to want to get something. And I didn't realize how strong that feeling of wanting to get something was. I didn't realize that it was strong at all until I listened. And so I decided to go to services without expecting to get anything, with no agenda, just to go. And we talked about agenda a couple of weeks ago here, which was an interesting topic. So I went with no agenda, and what I got was come to the power of no agenda. So when we talk about what's next with listening, it's the meaning of life. It's how this simple word about, or these simple words, no agenda, how powerful how powerful it becomes, how we shed layers of just no agenda through listening, how we do that and what happens and how we become more peaceful through these sheddings, through which listening takes us through. So what's next? I don't know. I just know that, and maybe because of the listening, I'm okay with not knowing. But I know that because of the listening, there's some understanding, some knowledge, some tapping into that there is. And maybe it's just my personal journey that I tap into. But that's the more. That's the more that I believe happens. Now, it can't be where there's nothing left. I don't think,
You
but I don't
just
know.
said that there was nothing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
So, but
you
that's
did a
something.
little course correct there and say uh, something. And obviously, Gail is here. Say,
Obviously,
saving the
yay.
day.
No, no, we've had Gail. And I'm looking, and for those of you listening, I'm just looking back just to make sure that I haven't missed a comment. But Gail, to fill you in, we're having a really lovely, like, conversation, I think. Um, and Margaret, we're talking about, like listening from the eyes of a listener, and part of um, that awareness is about our lovingly way that we get to critique ourselves or the world around us.
Did you say
Because,
critique? I'm sorry.
yes, critiquing ourselves,
Okay.
listening to how we critique ourselves so that we can grow, listening to the judgments we make so that we can either get past them or maybe make choices. Because listening, kind of is the soothes all of these things and allows us to make the changes and, get out of our box, see our box, all of these things. And I had shared some experiences that I've had this week of watching myself do things and listening through it so that I could make some profound changes. And Margarita just asked me, what, where listening, what do I think, or where do I think listening goes, or where we will end up with listening? And which was a great question because I think about that a lot. And I don't know. I just know that as I tune in greater and deeper and more, my life gets easier and better and deeper and easier and less deep. Seriously, and less deep, which is so interesting because as I think things are so deep, once my awareness comes to them, once my listening comes to them and I get out the information, I'm not as deep. It's like simpler. So anyway, does that sum it up okay, Margarita? Did I leave anything
I
out?
think so. I mean, I have this notion that the unexpected happened with Gail coming in right in that moment. So maybe Gail is the next step. But before she's saying something, I want to say that listening can also turn into observation. And that observation can come to presence, mindful awareness, just being aware, which
Well,
is
that's listening.
slightly different than listening.
But that is listening.
Yeah.
Because the awareness, you can't be aware if you're not listening.
And listening is observing to me, if I could just jump in there. I think it's what you're saying, Marilyn. It's like when I'm listening to my inner voice or my intuition, I'm being guided in some kind of way. It's funny because we're using the senses almost as metaphors. We could one word could be substituted for the other because I feel like I'm almost seeing the like I'm observing the thoughts, and I think that does lead to greater presence.
Absolutely. And that's what happens that's the answer, is the presence. That's the answer. But I'm just going to say because observing is listening. Without listening,
Right.
you don't know what you're observing.
Exactly.
Right? That's
what I was trying to say, but you said it better.
So
what kind of energy do you put into listening versus observing versus being just present? Because if you're listening, I'm listening to you a little bit. I can improve my listening to you, of course. And then that's my intention of focusing on you. But if I am in a state of observation or in presence, then anything in the environment is there. I don't put any kind of a projection of listening to just that or listening to that. It's like I'm present like 360 degrees. So there is a slight difference there, in my opinion.
Okay, that is listening. That is the listening that everything takes you to. Every level of listening takes you to what you just described. Because everything gives off information. Your observation is telling you, you're observing. The action of observing is the action of listening.
Well, I think that you probably are right on some levels, but...
Well, I don't know. I'm just...
Because we have our own ego, right? And when we're listening and you say information, so the ego wants information. But if you don't listen from the ego point of view, then you accept everything. It's like you're just there. There is no thoughts about it. It's just presence. We haven't engaged a sense of listening, seeing, and all of the other senses. We have connected with the deeper sense of just the presence. And I think that that's what's described when we have spiritual experiences, etc.
Yeah, okay. So when you're being present, what's happening? When you're the presence that you're talking about, what does that look like?
Well, it's like you're one with the universe.
Okay, and what's happening?
it's just that coming back into that state of complete awareness, which is you feel connected with everything.
So in that feeling of connected with everything, that is a form, to me, a form of listening. Otherwise, you can't. Okay, you can feel everything, but how do you feel? What's in the middle between feeling and everything? There's a listening.
Well, there is a gap, and there is a gap there, and I think that in reality, when I listen to a conversation, that's not what I mean when I say presence. And I'm not enlightened in any way, but I've experienced these moments.
Oh, yes, you are. Wait, I'm interrupting. You are enlightened. You are enlightened. Are you the only enlightened person? I don't know. Are you more enlightened? Who cares? But you are enlightened. And everybody that's listening is enlightened. Just because
yeah, but I burned myself on the fire yesterday, so I can't be enlightened. I can be enlightened on certain levels, maybe.
Well, okay, but it doesn't really matter. If you're enlightened, doesn't matter. It's a degree. It doesn't matter.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you.
Don't argue with me. You are enlightened.
Gail, help me here.
What do you think?
Well, in terms of the other conversation, I think that sometimes words get in the way. And I know that you were trying to make a distinction, Margarita, but I think that you're both talking about the same thing, and the words, words just get in the way sometimes.
Thank you.
It's hard to explain the experience of what we're talking about and learning. We're learning this experience, and the experience of listening is hard to describe because it is so indescribable.
Right, and all we have is words,
All we have is words. And so when I say, well, that is the pattern, or that is the flow of listening, it's like a bouncing ball that bounces off of all these things. And in that ball is a message, and what listening does. It gives us these messages, an impulse. We listen subatomically to acknowledge that impulse. It triggers something. And in that trigger, a slight little thing is a form of listening.
And so I could just only say that all those concepts that you're talking about, which is very valuable in certain dimensions, they don't exist in that moment of full presence. It's not in my experience anyway.
Right. In the moment of full presence, there is nothing. There is no action.
Exactly. Right? So that's the trigger is an action, right?
So you're right. In that is prior to that, which is just a moment of presence may be this much.
Because and then it could be dragged into talking again, right? And then we're not in that moment.
Right. So exactly. It's interesting though that because I have felt one with like more of the universe in that presence, in some way, a feeling of that presence when I've experienced death.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about it.
Well, I just know that when my father died,
yes,
that there was this just absolute. I don't know. I can't say absolute because I don't know, but in that time, there was an experience of what the only way of a presence, of where nothing else mattered to the degree they would matter. I had love, love matters, right? But the other things didn't matter. Things wrong didn't matter. I mean, like, I was in some cases raw. And I don't mean
Yes.
that in a negative way. I just
Yeah.
mean that when you experience a death, the way I experienced it, you're raw. There's that, and you feel love, but you don't feel, I didn't feel other like things that were going on around me that were like insignificant. And I was in a spiritual place where I felt you feel so connected to the universe because your loved one is out there somewhere. And their connection to you is so strong and they're out there somewhere. And so that connection of with them is so strong that you're so connected to the universe because they're there.
I
Well,
hear you. What you're explaining is so profound, and it's almost like what you're saying and bringing it back to presence, Marilyn, that you were so present. I mean, you were so present that actually the boundaries between life and death were no
Yes,
longer there.
that's exactly right. That's interesting, isn't it? Margarita's, are you clapping?
clapping hands. Yeah. I say this is brilliant.
Well,
I mean, the death, right? That death is something that is like that meteor shower or that volcano blast that you, or earthquake in your life, right? And then your skin, your spiritual skin, gets bombarded with that and removing all kinds of thorns and spikes and whatever, and you end up with a smooth skin, right? You're raw. You're raw. You're just yourself, your essence.
right. And but and it hurts.
It hurts.
It hurts, but it's also just,
It's everything.
and it doesn't hurt. It can't hurt because,
But it hurt before, and now, if you can see it, if you can be aware of it, then there is no pain at all.
But
it,
also, maybe it hurt before when you were feeling the loss. But when you're so present like that, there's not the loss anymore because you're still connected to him. So it didn't hurt in the
even
same way.
stronger. Yeah, even stronger. You know,
Right.
the focus is so strong that you could feel the presence is so strong that the physicality isn't, but the presence is strong. So Dave, I don't know what he said, and he's really listening. And
Good for you, Dave.
and he's driving. So I want to, I don't know what road he's on, but he's driving. So
Don't listen too much, Dave.
he said, yeah, really. Lightning from within is a fire under us that impels us forward.
Brilliant.
He's really good when he drives. He also says, when we remove our ego from the equation, we transcend from I only want what I want or what is interesting to me to I accept everything. It is all energy. It is all a toy for us to play with. And you know what? It's a toy.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
isn't it, Gail?
Yes, that's great. And I like play. I like the word play because that word has significance for me because I think that when we are connected with the universe, I think the universe plays. It's like it's its own energy, and I think it's a good energy. And I think that when we connect in with the universe, we could connect to like this happened, that happens. It just happens for the sake of itself.
So
I mean,
I want to ask you a question because this is something I think is really important for people to hear. So you couldn't come today, and well, you came into the green room, and then you had something to do, and then you were going to come back. You had a radio broadcast to do, and then we have some other people who couldn't be here. Dave is traveling. Heidi and Mark are doing something. It's very valuable. How do you feel about you know, like you said to me, you wrote me and you asked, you know, that you wouldn't be able to do this. Is this okay? Whatever. How do you feel knowing that it's okay here in this listening SkyWire, that it's okay, let's say, for Heidi and Mark to be so engrossed in something that they are um, mirroring a way of listening, or that Margarita shows up and you couldn't show up when you wanted to, but you could come back in without the stigma of I'm coming in, I'm interrupting, all that kind of yucky, crappy stuff, which I don't buy into. Way of this model of it's okay.
You know what? You froze for a second, and I think you froze when you were saying the most, and you were asking me something, right? And I didn't get it. I'm sorry. Can you say it again?
Yeah. Margarita, did you hear me, or did I freeze for you too?
I didn't hear you either.
Oh, goodness gracious.
I mean, I heard most of it. I just, you know, that like Heidi and Mark were doing their thing, and Margarita came in, and I came in, and you're asking me how I felt
the
about
the freedom. How do you feel about this exemplifying freedom? In other words, go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's the play. That's sort of like an example. It exemplifies the play. It's I don't know. It's very delightful. It's just I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's a sense of acceptance of myself, acceptance of what is.
Exactly. Well, that's because. So for those of you that are listening, you know, there are times that things pop up, right? And that you do your best to do something, but you have to switch to something else, and you have to listen to your integrity, your morals, your ethics, you know, what's showing up, you know, why am I not doing something? Why am I? But when you get to something that says, you know, I need to do this and not this today, how do you feel about coming out of your box to do something? You know, like Gail coming in the green room, having a placeholder with her picture, leaving for a little while, and then popping in. Some people, you know, feel like I shouldn't just pop in because it's a show, and I say it doesn't matter. Pop. If you have to pop, pop. You know, why not pop? It's like life. You know, you got to take yourself out. You got to come back in. Pop. Let's all get used to popping. Then it won't be such a, you know, pop nicely though. You know,
Are we popcorns?
Yeah, pop with respect. You know, pop nicely when you enter a room. You know, you come in. You don't go, so what did I miss? You know. Or come in loud, or you come in respectfully, whether it's the green room, the purple room, or the living room at somebody's house. You watch yourself. There's no reason you can't pop. We waste too much time, you know, concerning ourselves with how something looks in an unhealthy, unnatural way. Being able to just pop in life, you got to be able to pop, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I think it all really depends on who's doing the popping, you know? Like who's running the show, though. I mean, when you're making decisions in your life, who is making that decision? Is it you as your empowered self, or is it your ego or your lower self that is really wants what it wants and does what it wants and doesn't take into consideration what's needed into the situation? I mean, all of us, we have both of those sides of us, you know. We have our true, authentic, powerful self. Some of us are more connected to that part of ourselves than others, and it takes a lot of work. It's a lifetime project as far as I'm concerned. But it comes down to who's doing the popping, because, I mean, I'll just say from this experience, you know, I was very clear who was making those decisions. You know, that I asked you earlier, would it be okay if I did this? And then I came in, I said hello, I left my picture, I went, I did my business, and I came back, and I knew who was doing that. So when I came in, I didn't have to, I just knew what to do. But if, say, like, you know, I also have that other part of me, like we all do, the feel for part, the afraid part, whatever. If that part was running the show, you know, I think it would have looked different. It would have looked different. And, you know, today I was my powerful self. I don't want anybody to think that I don't miss the mark because I do. We all do. You know.
But that's part of, listening from the eyes of a listener.
Right.
Right? Margarita.
Well, I'm confused by listening and seeing. So I'm a visual person. I take in energy, sensing energy with my eyes. I don't sense energy with my ears. Uh, I can hear sounds, but I sense energy with some other sense.
Well, can I just hop in here for a second? Because Margarita, I think we're just using the words metaphorically. I think when Marilyn is saying listening, she's not saying I'm listening with my ears. That's what I was saying before. It's like when I listen, I actually see it. I do observe. That's when I just came into the conversation. That's what we were talking about. It's like I observe the listening. Like we all get inner messages in different ways. Some of us are more visual people. We get a visual. Some of us are more like we feel it. You know what I mean? We feel it in our bodies. And some of us, we don't know how we know it, but we just know it. And it just, I don't know, it just seems like the word isn't important. She doesn't mean listening by ears, using your ears.
Most of it is not by the ears.
Well, I say this because we have a third eye, right, which we can take in visual component and visions, but we also have a third ear. We have a third ear that can hear extraordinary messages. We have a third voice that can talk to us from another realm. I mean, I think this is making distinctions about the different levels. And I don't know, the energy, if you go out and in the sun and it's so lovely, what kind of sense is that? So I think it's very good to be distinct and define exactly what we're doing. This makes much more sense to me anyway. So thank you for actually letting me have that insight.
Yeah, it's very important. Because what you're doing and how you are expressing this connection is what the subatomic level is. This is where I want to spend my time sharing what you just were talking about. I can say easily, so when you listen, you make eye contact, you stand still, you watch your body language, you look at other people's body language, but I want to talk about the listening more. I want to talk about it all, but I want to talk about listening more. The listening we do that does not involve the ears more. The ones that we are not accustomed to applying listening to or understanding that it is listening. When you get a feeling, you've got to listen. What is that feeling? When you go outside and you make, this feels hot or this feels cold or the sun, or that's listening. When you look at a picture and you get a feeling or you process what the picture looks like, that's listening. Everything is listening. Every way we do it.
So I'm thinking that many people have different definitions of it. So let's say that we're going to accept that other people have different definitions of this, right? I can hear what you're saying, and I can agree on that in that point of view, but not all people have that point of view, perhaps.
Well, whatever word you want to choose, you're still processing information. Somehow you're processing something in some way, shape, or form.
And it's a certain kind of information. It's you could put, here we go again with words, but it's intuition. We're not talking about logic. We're not talking about rational thought. That could be part of it. But to me, the listening that we're talking about is a particular kind of listening. We're listening to something in particular. We're not, if we're listening to the thoughts and the fears, whether we act on it is another thing. But when we listen to those, it's going to get us in one place. And when we tell those fearful thoughts, thank you very much, now go sit in the corner, and I'm going to go listen to my intuition. I'm going to be guided by a higher knowing, some sort of, it's like we get this information. I don't know where it comes from, it's just information that comes to us from a different realm. And to me, when we talk about listening, it's more in that vein. I mean, that's my personal.
And I think when you're listening to energy,
yes,
you're listening, or energy is speaking to you.
Right.
Something about energy is speaking to you. And when I think about what Margarita said before, Margarita, when you were talking about presence,
yeah.
I wonder that when you get to a presence, you're not doing listening like, okay, let me listen. You are absorbing on some level. You're absorbing.
There is no distance.
Yeah.
Between it.
Yeah, there's no distance, and you are just it.
Yeah.
You're just that. You are the. It's like when I say the difference between quick listening and quick thinking. Quick thinking is more processing, more action orientated. You're still doing something. You're gonna have quick thinking. You're gonna have to do something with it. With quick listening, there's nothing more to do.
Okay, let me give you an example about all these concepts. So if I feel in a moment have no distance to something, so that's like when you have the flour and the raisins and the almonds and the milk and the eggs in a muffin, you become the muffin.
Yep. And you become the muffin. You become the sun. You become the warmth. You become connected to each other. You feel the oneness. All of those things. There is for me, in the right before you access that oneness, there is something there that I call listening, because there's some kind of information, some kind of bridge, some kind of connection, some kind of something that you are quickly, like super quickly finding, that becomes that connection. But I would think that this is a great, what is listening, right?
We're having fun today. This is so cool. What's Dave's comments?
Let's see, and then let's see. Let me see if there's another comment from Dave, and otherwise we're at our hour. I mean, can you believe it? And I always, it's just amazing to me. So let's see if I have one more last comment from. Okay. So here is Dave's final comment, and then we're gonna say thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and we're going to carry this conversation further. But the universe is constantly engaging with us, testing us, and throwing all manner of things forward towards us that we can engage with or not. It never stops. How we deal with it will not change what is sent to us. We deal with death badly. Don't worry, another death will come along for us to deal with. Absolutely. It is all a learning curve that we are on, a constant, never-ending journey towards self-realization, actualization, so that one day when the universe calls us to join it, we are ready. And that's it. I mean, and ready for what? We don't know. But final word, Gail?
No, it's just that was very profound, Dave. I appreciate that.
And Margarita, final word?
Yeah, that was a moment of presence. Thank you.
And everyone out there, thank you for being here with us today and being on this journey with us from the eyes of a listener. Please be eyes of the listeners too, and see what you come up with and come share. We'll see you next week.